I made a game about a floppy physics-based worm in 24 hours. Let's see how I made it. Let's go. I made this game for the GOTM Jam number 11 with the theme Up Up and Away. I thought about tackling the Up Up part of the theme by climbing a mountain and the Away by going away from depression and bad thoughts. So the first thing, and probably one of the most important, was working on the worm movement mechanic. Thankfully, it was quite simple to do. You see, it's well known that in nature, a worm is just a bunch of rigid bodies connected by pin joints, and so that's exactly what I did inside Godot. One important thing is to disable collision between the bodies that are attached by a joint. This is crucial because they overlap and we don't want the physics server to go crazy. Other bodies will collide, so we can curl on ourselves and have support. Now we have a cool chain-like object, but no way to control it. What I want is to control the worm using two joysticks on a gamepad, so the next logical step is to add control for both the head and the tail of the worm. I also mapped the input to WSD and IGKL for keyboard control. To control the worm, I simply add an impulse to the head or tail based on the joystick direction. And with that, we already have a pretty cool way to control the worm. The only problem is that now when you hold both joysticks up, you have the ability to fly. To change that, I'm going to distribute the force on both the head and the tail. That way, when both joysticks are up, they will each have half of the force, and thus the worm won't fly anymore. Yay! To tweak a bit more the controls, I also apply a physics material to each body, with much more friction and zero bounciness. That way, it's easier to grab onto obstacles. Now that the controls are done, we need to build a world to climb. The level need to be quite vertical, that way if you fall, you lose progress and you'll have to climb back again. You can clearly see the inspiration from Getting Over It there. To quickly create a world, I use the SmartShape 2D add-on with which I can create closed terrain with curves and textures. I can then quickly build a world and even carve obstacles directly in the walls. It will also automatically create collisions for you if you want. From there, it's just a matter of adding obstacles and ways to climb with a lot of testing to see if it's possible or not. To add variety and also make floating obstacles, I created a simple object, which is a static body with a polygon and a collision polygon that I can then shape however I want. I also started working on different physics-based obstacles. That is the amazing thing of working with physics-based character. You can just add object and they'll interact without writing any code. I created simple boxes, something I call a rotator, which will just rotate around an axis, pendulum-like platforms that are very springy, wind, boulders, and finally a bridge. I also made a rope, but I didn't really find any use for it. You'll also find a water part where it's just an area 2D with much less gravity, so you have the impression of floating. One mention to a cool mechanic that I wasn't able to use in the final game, it's the bridge mechanic. Basically, you can stretch yourself between two edges and then stuff can roll on you. This was a cool idea but hard to use in practice, especially to not lock the player in an impossible scenario. With all of that, the world was starting to take shape, but it was still placeholder graphics. So I launched Affinity Designer and I started working on different assets for the game. I created textures for the environments, something resembling a cave for the first part, a transition part with dirt and grass, and finally the mountain. Because the worm will start in a cave, I thought it would be a good idea to give him a little helmet, especially since he's jamming his head in the floor all the time. I also wanted more obstacles, so I designed a few things that we could find in a cave and on a mountain. Using them in the game is super simple by just setting up a static body and a collision shape. I created the assets as I was creating the world, trying to add interesting stuff to climb on. To finish with the world, I added clouds on which you can climb. They are attached by two spring joints, so they move and rotate, which makes it a bit trickier than having something completely fixed. Now the game is nearly done. I need to add different text bubbles that the worm will think. Remember, that's the away from his problems part. So I wrote different lines from very depressing thoughts to happy and proud ones. Then I simply display them based on the altitude at which the worm is. I'll let you experience those yourself as I don't want to spoil everything. I also wanted the music to adapt, so I gathered 3 types of music: sad, normal, and happy. I then used areas to decide when to switch music. The transition is quite abrupt, but it works. I added simple splat sounds when the worm is eating something, and I think it adds a lot to the quirkiness of the game. To finish the game, I added some sort of title screen with the name of the game and panels to remind the player of the controls. Of course, everything physics-based. I also added some visual treats such as particles and a waterfall shader. For the end screen, I simply added a thank you for playing with a button to restart or quit, but you'll see that while playing the game. And guys, that's basically it for Sadworm. I spent just shy of 24 hours on it, and I think the result is kinda good. I'm happy with the controls and some of the mechanics that you have to overcome. If you want to try it yourself, just head over to my itch page. You can play it with both gamepads and keyboards. If you like this video, consider subscribing for more and following me on Twitch, where I stream regularly. You can wishlist Dashpong, the local multiplayer game I'm working on. And if you want to learn how to program with Godot, I have a special offer for you. Just use the link in the description to access the Learning Programming in the Godot-engine course and use the coupon Elliptic to get 10% off. This is an affiliate link, so if you want to support me, please use the link to get this course. I'll see you in the next video, and in the meantime, have a great day. See you later. Bye!